Tae-ho stood at the edge of a massive stone platform, looking out at a landscape that seemed to belong to nightmares. The sky above Mort Haven was a strange shade of purple, and strange winds howled across rocky mountains in the distance. All around him, thousands of alien creatures moved and spoke in languages he did not understand. Some had multiple eyes. Others had skin that looked like metal or crystal. A few seemed to be made entirely of energy. He was 28 years old, and he was the only human here. The journey to this place had been long and unexpected. 6 months ago, Tae-ho had been working as a chef in Seoul, South Korea. He lived a normal life, cooking food for customers, going home to his small apartment and watching television in the evenings. Then came the day when a strange light filled his kitchen. When his vision cleared, he was no longer on Earth. Instead, he found himself on a massive space station called the Galactic Council Hub. An official from the council had explained everything to him. Humanity was a new species in the galaxy, only recently discovered. The council wanted to test human abilities. They selected one human from Earth to participate in the Galactic Interstellar exam. That human was Tae-ho, chosen because his genetics and mental profile showed promise. He had not really understood what that meant, but here he was now, about to fight for his life on an alien world. The exam officials had given him 3 things. First, a basic knife made from a strange metal that never got dull. Second, a water container that could hold enough water for 2 days. Third, a map showing resource zones on the planet. The officials had told him that the exam would test survival, strategy, and innovation. Contestants would have 30 days on Mort Haven. Those who survived and showed growth in their abilities would advance. Those who died would be, well, they did not need to explain that part. Around Tae-ho, the other competitors showed no interest in him. A tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms was sharpening a weapon that looked like a combination of a sword and something Tae-ho did not have a name for. Nearby, a being made of what looked like living crystal was examining some kind of technology that glowed with bright light. Several insect-like creatures were communicating with each other through sounds that made Tae-ho's ears hurt. One alien looked at Tae-ho and laughed. The laugh sounded like breaking glass. That alien turned to its companions and said something in its own language. The group laughed together, their eyes fixed on the human. Tae-ho understood without speaking their language. They were laughing at him. To them, he was weak. Humans had no special powers, no advanced technology, no natural weapons. They were soft, slow, and fragile. Tae-ho did not argue with them. Instead, he walked to the map the officials had given him and studied it carefully. The map showed the entire planet. Red zones marked dangerous areas where powerful predators lived. Yellow zones showed areas with water and basic plants. Green zones indicated places with no current activity. Most of the other competitors were already running toward the red zones, eager to prove their strength and find treasure or rare resources. That was when Tae-ho noticed something that made him stop. A creature approached him quietly. This being was different from the others. It had a body covered in what looked like crystal or stone, smooth and beautiful in design. 2 large eyes, dark as night, watched Tae-ho with actual curiosity instead of contempt. The creature stood about 2 meters tall, and its movements were smooth and controlled. "You are the human," the creature said in perfect English. Its voice sounded like wind through rocks. Tae-ho nodded. "Yes, my name is Tae-ho. I am Min-suk," the creature replied. "I come from the Verdian system. I have studied your species. Most in the council believe humans are weak, but I think there is more to you than most see." Tae-ho was surprised that someone had bothered to learn about humans. "Thank you for saying that." Min-suk gestured toward the other competitors. "They go to fight each other in the red zones. They waste energy and die quickly. They think strength is everything, But the exam is not only about strength, it is about survival, about growth, about showing the council what your species can do. What are you trying to say? Tae-ho asked. Min-suk turned to look at him directly. I am saying that I see something valuable in you. In my culture, we learn that the most dangerous predators are not the ones with the biggest teeth. They are the ones who understand how to survive when others fall. I propose an alliance. We work together, your mind, my strength. We do not fight in the red zones where everyone expects us to be. We find our own path. Tae-ho thought about this for a moment. An alliance could help him survive longer, but it could also be a trap. Maybe Min-suk simply wanted to use him and then abandon him later. As if reading his thoughts, Min-suk spoke again. You are right to be careful, but I tell you this. I have survived 4 exams before this one. I know what works and what does not. Humans have something special. On your world, you had no natural weapons like claws or fangs. You had no scales for armor or poison for defense. Yet you became the dominant species on your planet. How? Through cleverness, through making tools, through cooperation. These skills will mean more on Morthaven than strength. Tae-ho looked at the map again. The green zones, the ones with no activity, had something interesting. They were isolated from the main fighting areas, but they also seemed empty of resources. Most competitors would avoid them because there was nothing to gain there immediately. You have a plan? Tae-ho asked Min-suk. We go to the green zones, Min-suk said. We observe, we learn, we gather resources that others ignore. While everyone fights in the red zones for the valuable things, we build a foundation. We become stable. Then, when others are weak and exhausted, we become strong. Something in Tae-ho responded to this idea. It made sense to him. In his life, he had learned that quick solutions often failed. Good food took time. Good businesses took patience. Good relationships took work. Maybe surviving an alien world was not so different. Okay, Tae-ho said to Min-suk, let us try this together. The two of them left the gathering platform as the sun began to set. Behind them, they could already hear the sounds of conflict in the distance. Screams and explosions echoed across the landscape. Other contestants were already dying. Tae-ho walked into the purple-shadowed valleys of Morthaven, carrying only his knife, his water container, and his map. He did not know if he would survive. He did not know if Min-suk could be trusted. But for the first time since arriving in this strange galaxy, he felt something like hope. He was not the strongest, he was not the fastest, but he had something else. He had the mind of a human, shaped by Earth's challenges and Earth's opportunities. If he was going to survive, it would not be through strength. It would be through the one thing humans had always done best: adaptation. By the 5th day on Morthaven, Tae-ho and Min-suk had established a camp in a sheltered valley between 2 tall rock formations. The location was perfect. Wind could not easily reach them here. Water flowed from a small spring. And importantly, predators seemed to avoid this area because there was nothing that attracted them. No easy food, no territory markers from other creatures. Tae-ho had discovered something interesting on the 2nd day. While walking along the valley, he found plants that resembled earth vegetables. They were not exactly the same, but they were close enough. He studied them carefully. The leaves were thick and waxy. The roots dug deep into the rocky soil. Some had bulbs underground that looked like potatoes or onions. He pulled one up and showed it to Min-suk. Can these be eaten? Min-suk examined the plant. I do not know. But I know the principle. Try it on a small animal first. If the animal becomes sick or dies, the plant is probably poisonous to us. If the animal remains healthy, we can eat it too. They found a small creature, something like a lizard with 4 legs and a tail covered in tiny spikes. Tae-ho prepared a small portion of the plant and left it for the animal. They waited. Hours passed. The animal sniffed the food and began to eat. It did not become sick. It did not die. By the next morning, the animal was still alive and seemed content. Taeho smiled to himself. He had been a chef for 10 years. He understood food. He understood which plants could nourish and which ones could poison. And now, he was using that knowledge to survive on an alien world. He began to gather the plants regularly. He stored them in a dry place under a rock overhang. Then he did something that surprised Min-suk. He began to prepare the plants in different ways. He boiled some with water. He dried others in the sun. He even began to experiment with fermentation, using techniques he had learned years ago from his grandmother. "Why do you do this?" Min-suk asked, watching Taeho work one afternoon. "Why not just eat the plant when you are hungry?" "Because," Taeho explained, "food that is prepared correctly lasts longer. Food that is dried or fermented can be stored for weeks or months. This means we do not have to search for food every day. We can save energy for other things. We can be smarter about our survival." Min-suk seemed to understand. The Verdian warrior had survived 4 exams before because he understood strategy. And strategy meant using your resources efficiently. On the 8th day, they encountered Ji-woo. She came to their camp in the evening, moving so quietly through the rocks that neither Taeho nor Min-suk noticed her until she was very close. When she revealed herself, both of them reached for their weapons. But Ji-woo raised her empty hands in a sign of peace. "I do not want to fight," she said in English, though her accent was different from Min-suk's. "I want only to talk." Ji-woo was a Kethian, a species that had adapted to live in dark underground caves for millions of years. Her eyes were enormous and reflective, like a cat's eyes, built to see in almost complete darkness. Her skin was pale and smooth. She wore simple clothing and carried a small bow made from bone and something that looked like spider silk. "How did you find us?" Taeho asked. "I followed the sound of water and the smell of cooked food," Ji-woo replied. "My people hunt in darkness, so we follow smells that others cannot detect. You are cooking something. It smells good, different from other food I have tasted on this world." Min-suk stepped forward. "Why should we trust you?" "Because I am also hiding in the green zones," Ji-woo said. "I am also not fighting in the red zones. And because I have an infection in my leg that is making me weak, and I think your friend might be able to help me." She showed them her leg. A wound ran along her calf, and the skin around it was swollen and red. It looked infected. Taeho had worked in restaurants for many years, and in those years he had learned basic first aid. He had also learned about hygiene and cleanliness because food safety depended on it. He cleaned the wound carefully with boiled water. He found a plant with natural antibacterial properties in the valley. He crushed it into a paste and covered the wound. Then he wrapped it with cloth strips that he had carefully cleaned. "Keep it dry," he instructed Ji-woo. "Change the wrapping every day. Eat food that has good nutrients. The infection should improve in 3 or 4 days." Ji-woo watched him work with amazement. "How do you know these things?" "I learned from my world," Taeho said simply. "We do not have advanced medicine, so we learn to use nature and keep things clean." By the 4th day, Ji-woo's infection had improved dramatically. The swelling was gone. The wound was beginning to heal. She made the decision to stay with them. "2 fighters and 1 person who understands survival," she said. "This is a good team." Together, the 3 of them became more efficient. Min-suk hunted larger animals using his strength and the bow that Ji-woo had taught him to use. Taeho processed the meat carefully, preserving some by smoking it over fire, drying other portions in the sun. Ji-woo used her excellent vision to find valuable plants during the night hours when most creatures were sleeping. But something else happened that Taeho had not expected. Other creatures in the valley began to gather near their camp, attracted by the smell of food and the sense of safety. Some came at night to steal from their food stores. Others simply stayed nearby, watching from a distance. Taeho noticed this pattern, and realized something important. Predators, like most creatures, were driven by hunger and fear. If they could create a place that had food, but was not threatening, perhaps animals would come peacefully instead of attacking. He began leaving portions of prepared food outside their camp deliberately. At first, the animals approached cautiously, but soon they understood. This place meant food. This place meant no danger. Soon, an entire community of creatures surrounded their camp, coexisting peacefully. Minsuk and Jiwoo were confused at first, but Taiho explained his thinking. If we create a place where even predators can eat without fighting, then they have no reason to harm us. We are not competing with them for food anymore. We are partners in this space. By the 15th day of the exam, their camp had become something more than a shelter. It had become a small ecosystem of cooperation, and word had begun to spread among the other competitors. There was a group in the green zone that had figured out something important. They knew how to survive not by fighting, but by understanding life itself. Some competitors looked at this with respect, others looked at it with envy, and a few were beginning to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the human's way of thinking was not weakness after all. On the 18th day of the exam, violence came to their peaceful valley. Taeho was working near the fire, preparing a meal using techniques he had perfected over the past weeks. He had discovered that combining different animals' meat with local plants created flavors that were not just nutritious, but actually pleasant to eat. He was so focused on his work that he almost did not notice when Minsuk suddenly grabbed a weapon and stepped forward defensively. "We have visitors," Minsuk said quietly, "and they do not look friendly." At least 20 creatures emerged from the rocks around their camp. They were different from any group Taeho had seen before. Each one carried advanced weapons that glowed with energy. Their bodies were covered in some kind of protective gear made from materials that Taeho did not recognize, and their leader, a massive creature with dark red skin and 3 eyes, walked directly toward them with obvious authority. "I am Darkune," the leader announced in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. "I lead this zone now. You have food here. You have shelter here. These things belong to me now. You can join my group and serve me, or you can die. Choose." Jiwoo moved to stand beside Minsuk. Taeho could see her hand moving toward her weapon. In a moment, there would be violence. In moments, one or more of them might die. But Taeho did something unexpected. He stood up calmly and walked toward Darkune with his empty hands raised. Minsuk tried to stop him, but Taeho kept walking. "My name is Taeho," he said to Darkune. "You are welcome to eat with us." Darkune laughed. His laugh sounded like an explosion. His soldiers laughed too. They seemed to think Taeho was making a joke. "You think you are funny, human?" Darkune asked. "No," Taeho replied. "I am serious. You look tired. Your soldiers look tired. They carry heavy weapons and heavy armor. They are hungry. Come, eat. We have prepared food." Something in Taeho's voice and posture seemed to confuse Darkune. The alien leader was used to creatures either fighting him or running away. This human was doing neither. He was simply inviting him to eat. "This is a trap," one of Darkune's soldiers warned. But Darkune was curious. "Show me," he commanded. Taeho led them to where the food was stored. He had prepared several dishes using different meat and plant combinations. Some were roasted, some were fermented. All of them looked appetizing and smelled wonderful. Taeho served portions on pieces of large leaves, offering them first to Darkune. The alien leader took a piece of roasted meat combined with a local plant that had a slightly sweet flavor. He chewed it slowly. His 3 eyes blinked. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke. "This is good. Very good. I have eaten food from advanced civilizations, but this is different. This is not just fuel. This tastes like something more. It is made with care. Taeho explained. Not just with ingredients, but with time and thought. Every culture has food that means something. On my world, we believe food is not just about survival. It is about bringing people together. Darkune and his soldiers ate. As they ate, something changed in their attitude. The aggression faded. The weapons were lowered slightly. They were soldiers who were tired from constant fighting. They were hungry not just in their bellies but in their spirits. Food made with care affected them differently than food made simply for energy. When they finished eating, Darkune looked at Taeho with different eyes. "Why would you share with beings who threatened you?" he asked. "Because," Taeho said, "threatening and fighting is what you know. But maybe what you really wanted was not food or territory. Maybe you wanted rest, peace, something that tastes good." Minsuk and Jiwoo approached carefully. They were still ready to fight, but they could see that the immediate danger had passed. Darkune made a decision. "I have conquered many zones in this exam," he said. "I have beaten many competitors. But this, I have not seen this before. You are smart, human, smarter than creatures with bigger brains. I was wrong about you." He paused and then continued. "I will not take your food by force, but I propose something else. Join with me. My soldiers will protect this zone from other competitors. We will have peace here. And your food will supply all of us. In return, you will teach my soldiers how to do what you do. We can be stronger together than apart." Taeho looked at Minsuk and Jiwoo. He could see doubt in their faces. This could be a trick. Darkune could pretend alliance and then betray them later. But Taeho had learned something important in his work as a chef. In a restaurant kitchen, you could not force people to work well together. They had to want to. They had to understand that cooperation benefited everyone. Once Darkune had tasted food made with care, something had shifted inside him. The meal had communicated a message that Taeho could not have expressed in words. "We can try," Taeho said, "but as a real alliance, not a forced one. Your soldiers work with us as equals. Everyone eats together. Everyone rests together. If someone wants to leave, they can leave with no punishment. That is the only way this works." Darkune agreed to these terms. Within days, their camp had grown. Where there had been 3, now there were 20. Darkune's soldiers learned quickly how to gather plants, how to preserve food, how to maintain sanitation that prevented sickness. But more importantly, they learned a completely new way of approaching survival. Instead of seeing everything as a competition, they began to see it as a community where different skills had value. On the 21st day, another group of desperate competitors arrived at their camp. These aliens had been weakened by constant fighting in the red zones. They were injured and starving, and instead of attacking them, Taeho's group welcomed them. They shared food, they shared shelter. They shared knowledge. Word spread quickly through the exam zones. There was a place where you did not have to fight, a place where you could rest and be healed. A place where strength was important, but wisdom was valued more. By day 24, their camp had become something that none of the Galactic Council officials had expected to see. It had become a sanctuary, and the human who had arrived on Morthaven as the weakest competitor was becoming the most important leader on the planet. On day 25, an announcement echoed across the entire planet through devices that Taeho did not fully understand. Every competitor received the same message. The Galactic Council was making a major change to the exam. Survival alone was no longer enough. The Council said that the final phase of the exam would test something different. Contestants were not only supposed to survive, but to create something. They needed to build a system, a structure, or an innovation that demonstrated their species' ability to advance and grow. Destruction was easy. Any species could destroy. But creation was harder. Creation showed true potential. Most of the competitors who heard this announcement fell silent. They had been thinking only about the next day, the next meal, the next fight. Creation required thinking about the future. It required cooperation and planning over many days. Most of them did not even know where to begin. Taeho understood immediately what this meant. The exam had changed from a test of survival to a test of civilization, and he had spent the last 25 days building the foundation for exactly this kind of civilization. He called a meeting with Minsuk, Jiwoo, Darkune, and the other leaders who had emerged from their growing community. They gathered in a large cave that had become their main meeting place. "We are in a unique position," Taeho explained. "Most competitors have spent their energy on fighting. We have spent our energy on building. Now the rules have changed, and this is our advantage." "What do you want to do?" Darkune asked. Taeho took a deep breath. "I want to build something that no one has built before on an alien world. I want to build a complete settlement, a place with organized food production, with systems for managing resources, with a way to trade goods fairly. And most importantly, I want to build something that brings different species together peacefully." Minsuk nodded slowly. "This is ambitious. This will require enormous effort. But," Jiwoo added, "if it works, it will show the Galactic Council that humans understand something important. We understand that cooperation is stronger than competition." They began work immediately. The first step was to expand the food production. They built terraces along the hillside where the plants could grow better. They organized a rotation system so that people took turns caring for the plants while others hunted or gathered. Darkun's soldiers, who were trained in construction, built raised beds and created a system to direct water from the spring to where the plants were grown. Jiwoo used her knowledge of the underground caves to discover more useful plants and minerals. She created maps showing where valuable things could be found. She also discovered that certain rocks could be shaped and used to make better tools. Taeho worked on something that seemed less important but turned out to be crucial. He created rules. Not rules enforced by punishment, but agreements that everyone understood. Rules about sharing food fairly, rules about keeping water clean, rules about respecting each other's territory and possessions. One important rule was that everyone ate together once per day. This daily meal became the heart of their community. It was not just about eating, it was about reinforcing their connection to each other. During the meal, they would share information. They would solve problems together. They would celebrate successes. But Taeho discovered something surprising as he worked. Different alien species had completely different dietary needs. Some preferred protein-rich meat. Others thrived on plants. Some needed minerals that came from certain types of rocks and soil. Some needed very specific types of foods to survive. This gave Taeho an idea. Instead of making one type of meal, why not make different meals designed for different species? He began experimenting. He created dishes specifically for Darkun's species, using ingredients that they particularly enjoyed. He made other dishes for Jiwoo's people that incorporated the minerals they needed. He even discovered that fermented foods that he had created were exactly what one of the other alien species needed to maintain their health. The result was unexpected. When different species could eat food specifically made for them, they became stronger and healthier. But more than that, they felt valued. They understood that Taeho was thinking about their needs specifically. This created loyalty and respect that no amount of force could have created. By day 28, their settlement had become a real place. It had organization. It had purpose. But Taeho knew that something important was missing. A settlement needed more than just rules and food. It needed meaning. He gathered everyone in the evening and made a proposal. "We need a center," he said. "A place that is not just for survival but for something more. On my world, we have places like this. We call them restaurants. They are places where people gather not just to eat, but to share stories, to connect with each other, to create memories." Darkune asked, "Why would we need this? We already have food." "Because," Taiho explained. "We do not just need food to survive. We need purpose. We need to understand why we are surviving. What makes life worth living is not just existence, but connection. A restaurant creates that connection." The concept was strange to many of them, but they understood what Taiho meant. They had already experienced it in their daily communal meals. Those meals had become more important than just food. On the final 2 days before the exam ended, they took a large stone cavern and began transforming it. They created a clean cooking area where Taiho could prepare food. They shaped stones into tables and benches for sitting. They even created decorations using colored rocks and plants arranged in patterns. By day 30, when the exam officially ended, their settlement had become something remarkable. It had not just survived, it had grown. It had developed structure and purpose, and at its heart was something unique in the galaxy. A restaurant run by a human, where beings from dozens of different species could gather together to share food and community. The Galactic Council observers, who had been watching silently throughout the exam, made detailed notes. They had expected to see combat and competition. Instead, they had witnessed something else. They had witnessed a human building not an empire through force, but a civilization through understanding and cooperation. The other competitors finished the exam with less impressive results. Many had survived by killing others. Some had found hordes of resources, but none had created something that worked as well as what Taiho had built. And more importantly, none had built something that seemed to make creatures actually happy. The results of the Galactic Interstellar exam were announced 3 weeks after it ended. Taiho sat in a large auditorium on the space station, surrounded by representatives from hundreds of species. The council leaders spoke about various competitors and their achievements. Most scores focused on combat effectiveness, resources gathered, and territory conquered. Then came the announcement about Taiho's group. The official said something that made the entire auditorium go silent. Humans had achieved the highest score in the exam, not in combat or resource acquisition, but in innovation and community development. This was unprecedented. Humans, a species that had been considered one of the weakest in the galaxy, had outperformed thousands of competitors in ways that the council had not even expected to measure. But the official continued. The settlement that Taiho had built was now being studied by council scientists. The social structure he had created, the food production system, and most surprisingly, the restaurant concept, were all being analyzed as models for future colonies and settlements across the galaxy. The most shocking part of the announcement was this. The Galactic Council was offering Taiho a position. They wanted him to establish a permanent cultural exchange center on Morthaven. They wanted to learn more about human approaches to survival and community building. And they were offering him resources and authority to expand his work. Taiho could have returned to Earth immediately. He could have been celebrated as a hero. He could have written books about his experience and lived a comfortable life. But he made a different choice. "I want to stay on Morthaven," he said during the official announcement. "I want to develop what we started there into something bigger. I want to turn our settlement into a place where species can come to learn, not just about food, but about how different beings can work together." The council approved his request. Within months, Taiho had built something that resembled a small city around the original settlement, but at its heart was still the restaurant. A new individual had arrived during the expansion phase. Her name was Jin, and she was a Solarian chef. Solarians were naturally adapted for high-heat environments because their bodies were designed to regulate temperature perfectly. With 4 arms and an innate understanding of flavor and cooking, Jin became Taiho's partner in the restaurant. When Taiho first met Jin, he showed her everything he had learned about combining different cuisines. Jin watched carefully and then did something that surprised him. She closed her 4 eyes for a moment in concentration, and then she began to cook. She used her 4 arms to perform multiple cooking tasks simultaneously. Her movements were graceful and precise. And when she was finished, she had created something that Tae-ho had never imagined possible. She had combined human cooking techniques with Solarian spice combinations and Kethian temperature control methods to create a dish that was, quite simply, the best thing either of them had ever tasted. "This is what I have been waiting for," Hae-jin said, her voice like warm metal. "I have spent years cooking for my people. We have perfected our techniques, but we have never shared them with other species. Working with you, I understand that cooking is a universal language. Every being understands the comfort of good food." Together, they revolutionized the restaurant. Where once it had been a simple gathering place, it became something legendary. They trained other aliens to become cooks. They created recipes specifically designed for different species' dietary needs and flavor preferences. They wrote down techniques so that knowledge could be passed to others. But something unexpected happened. The restaurant began to attract creatures from across the galaxy who were not part of the settlement. Soldiers on leave wanted to come experience the food. Scientists studying on the planet wanted to visit. Even wealthy merchants from distant systems started making trips specifically to eat at Tae-ho's restaurant. The restaurant became more than just a place to eat. It became a meeting point for different species. A place where a warrior could sit beside a scholar, where a young explorer could listen to stories from an old adventurer, where deals were made and friendships were formed. Tae-ho hired workers from dozens of different species. He taught them not just cooking techniques, but also principles that seemed to matter: respect for customers, consistency and quality, and the belief that good food creates joy in people's lives. One day, a young alien asked Tae-ho why he cared so much about the restaurant when he could have become a powerful leader or a wealthy businessman on any world he chose. Tae-ho thought about this question carefully. He thought about his life on Earth, cooking in a small restaurant in Seoul. He thought about how sometimes customers would come in sad or worried, and after eating good food, they would leave feeling better. He thought about how food had always been his way of connecting with people. "Because," he finally answered, "when I was on Earth, my job was not important to most people. They thought cooking was simple work. But I always knew it was more. Food is how we take care of each other. It is how we show love and respect. On my world, we were considered weak by the galaxy. But this weakness, this focus on caring for others instead of dominating them, turned out to be our greatest strength." Years passed. The restaurant continued to grow. Additional locations were opened. Culinary schools were established where others could learn these methods. Hae-jin opened 3 more restaurants across the planet. Min-suk became the chief of settlement security, protecting not through force but through understanding conflicts. Ji-woo discovered new plant species and created gardens that became model farms for the entire sector. The settlement that had started with just 3 beings in a hidden valley became a thriving city. Thousands of creatures from different worlds came to work, live, and learn. And at the center of it all was still the original restaurant, where Tae-ho still worked most evenings, preparing meals for whoever walked through the door. Scientists from across the galaxy studied how such a diverse community could function so well without conflict. They studied the food production systems. They analyzed the social structures. But they often missed the most important element. It was not the systems that made the community work. It was the principle behind the systems, the principle that every life had value. That cooperation was stronger than domination, that caring for others was not weakness, but the highest form of strength. Humans on Earth watched from their home world with wonder. A member of their species had gone to an alien exam and had not just survived, but had changed how the entire galaxy thought about community and cooperation. Young humans began to study agriculture, cooking, and social sciences with new enthusiasm. They began to understand that their species' greatest gift was not in technology or weapons, but in the ability to create meaning and connection. And every evening, in a restaurant on an alien world, a human chef worked alongside beings from dozens of species, creating food that brought joy and understanding. The exam that had tested whether humanity could survive had instead revealed something greater. It had revealed that humans could teach the galaxy what it meant to truly live.